Okay, hope you're well. So today we're going to learn about the impact of industrial activity in the environment, because most countries have factories. We have loads of industrial activity. We love it. We love it. The jobs it creates money, it makes us products. However, it's going to have an impact on the environment. Like if you think about it, during the coronavirus, most of the industries and factories shut down because obviously they couldn't leave their workers in. You couldn't maintain social distancing for fear of spread of the virus. And countries like China and France and England and Germany noticed a huge reduction in air pollution. They noticed that the air quality had really improved. So it just goes to show that factories, while they're great at creating jobs and money and products, they really, really do affect the environment. So we're going to look at the impact of industrial activity of factories on agriculture, on forestry, on tourism, and our own quality of life. So I suppose if you think about most factories, they're big buildings, and in order to run them, they need to burn huge amounts of oil, coal, and gas. So factories, most of them are burning fossil fuels. When they're burning fossil fuels, such as oil, coal, and gas, that's releasing harmful gases up into the air. And we see them going up into the air, but then they kind of disappear and we don't think any more about them. But what happens when they rise up into the air is they mix with the moisture in the air to form acid rain. Now, it's not like acid rain is going to fall down and melt your skin, but it can affect your health in a kind of other ways. So regular, normal rain is just normal moisture, uncontaminated. Whereas acid rain is moisture mixed in with gases, okay? So acid rain is a combination, it's a mixture of water and gases. What gases am I talking about? Sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, okay? So that's what we're talking about when we mention acid rain. Now, pH-wise, you're used to the pH scale from science. We'll say uncontaminated water in the atmosphere would have a pH of about 5.6. That's fine, that's pretty neutral. Whereas acid rain has a pH of below 4.3. So you can see it's really going to the acidic side of the pH scale there. So this is going to have an effect in the environment if we've got rain falling that's acidic, okay? So it's as acidic as lemon juice or vinegar. Power stations are a big cause of the acid rain happening. I mean, we have power stations in Ireland, they have power stations all across Europe, all across the world. What is the purpose of the power station? To give us all electricity. How do they get electricity to homes and schools and buildings and offices? They burn fossil fuels. So power stations are burning huge amounts of oil, coal and gas to give us all electricity. But what's happening is, you can see in the picture in front of you, is there's huge emissions of gases such as sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide being pumped up into the air. That's mixing with the moisture in the air, and that's falling as acid rain. Smelters also contribute to acid rain as well, because to smelt the iron ore, you have to burn coal. Okay, it's an efficient method of doing it. So burning coal releases particularly harmful gases. It's a really, really dirty fuel. So that's contributing and causing acid rain. Vehicle engines also release nitrogen oxide. So I know our cars were more choosing hybrid cars and electric cars, but we still have a lot of cars across the world that have exhausts and there's pumping out fumes out the back of them. Okay, so there's a lot of things to blame with regards to acid rain. I suppose if we look at the role of wind in all this, where is the acid rain spreading to? Well, these power stations in recent times, they built these tall, high chimney stacks. You'll notice them in a lot of the power stations across Ireland and across the world. They thought that if the gases were released higher up in the air, that the wind would disperse and scatter the gases over a wider area and that it wouldn't be as harmful. I don't know why, but I suppose they thought that it just wouldn't reach us. They didn't think that we would really get acid rain. So they thought by building high chimneys, you pump up the fumes and the gases higher up into the air and that it wouldn't come back down, really. It wouldn't affect us as such. However, all that just happens is the wind just blows these gases from one country to the next. And what's actually happening, and keep an eye on the map there in front of you, a lot of gases are blown in from Britain and Europe and they're blown across to Sweden, and Sweden gets a lot of acid rain as a result. So again, looking at the map, look at Ireland, look at Britain, look at France, look at Germany. We've a lot of factories across Europe, and we've a lot of industrial activity, and we're burning a lot of fossil fuels in these factories, and we're burning fossil fuels in our power plants as well. All those fumes up in the air are being blown up towards Sweden because of prevailing winds, and they're blowing the gases up towards Sweden. In the air as they're being blown up towards Sweden, they're mixing with the moisture and they're falling as acid rain. So Sweden is really seeing the harmful results of acid rain, and the question in front of you is this fair? No, because Sweden might be particularly the worst culprits for producing harmful gases, but we are doing it and we're leaving them with the fallout from it. So Sweden is most affected by acid rain. You can see in the colour chart there in front of you that the highest risk is that red, real orangey reddy colour, okay? What is the damage caused by acid rain? So this is what you're possibly going to be asked inside in an exam. So what can it do to the environment? Well, first of all, anyway, it damages forests. It really, really harms the forests, especially in Sweden. They've seen really, really firsthand at how it affects the forestry trees. So what happens is when it rains in Sweden and when it rains in the forests, the acid rain washes down to the soil and it leaches all of the nutrients down out of the soil. So it washes all of the minerals and nutrients away from the soil. So the roots of the trees in the forestry trees, they can't reach the nutrients. So what happens is the trees get weak because they can't access the nutrients because the acid rain has leached and washed all the nutrients away. So the tree is now weak. It also damages the foliage, which is the leaves on the tree or the needles and the branches of the tree. So the tree is now damaged and it's weak because it can't access nutrients and it's been affected by acid rain. So the tree is now more likely to die from diseases and parasites because trees can really get affected by diseases as well. So they've noticed in Sweden a lot of their forestry trees have died off and they haven't really had the option of replanting because the soil has been literally leached of all its nutrients, okay? The second thing in the environment that the acid rain can really affect is lakes, okay, and the fish life. So I suppose when it rains acid rain, the acid rain naturally pours into the rivers and lakes. And in the lakes, when you have acid rain inside it, it obviously naturally lowers the pH quality of the water. So the pH has now gone from 5.6 to below 4.3. And what happens is when you have acidic water like that, it damages the fish eggs, okay? So the fish aren't able to hatch anymore. They lose their fertility, basically. So the fish don't hatch anymore. And what happens is they die off and then there's no more to replace them. So fish life totally disappears then from the lakes. So that affects the fishing industry. That affects jobs. That affects restaurants. And as a result, because the pH has dropped to below 4.3 in the lakes in Sweden in particular, they're biologically dead, okay? They don't hold fish life anymore, so literally the lake is dead. Okay, so that's a huge effect. So far, acid rain damages the forestry trees, it damages the fish life in the lakes. It also affects soil fertility and agriculture. So naturally enough, what happens is acid rain leaches and washes the minerals and nutrients out of the soil, and then the soil isn't fertile anymore. And if the soil isn't fertile, what happens is the farmer has to come along and replace all these lost minerals, and he's to buy expensive fertilizer. And expensive fertilizer is a big added cost to farmers, you know, something they could do without. And they're seeing a lot of that in Sweden as well. The other thing and the other damage that acid rain can cause is damage to old historic buildings. So what happens is it basically kind of corrodes the surface of these old stone buildings. So you can see that greeny tinge of a colour there. That's the acid rain really mixing in and affecting the stone of the building. Buildings such as the Colosseum in Rome, we'll say the cathedral in Cologne that we studied in Germany, it dissolves the surface of the stone. And that's bad then for tourism, because tourists come to visit monuments, they come to visit statues, and if they're destroyed and damaged by acid rain, you're not going to want to take your picture of it, you know, anymore. So the tourists won't come in. So really and truly, acid rain can affect quite a lot of things in the environment. The final thing I suppose it can do is it can really affect our quality of life. I suppose acid rain affects the quality of water that comes from lakes. So like we're drinking that, how safe is that? It has been known to cause asthma in certain people, because if there's acid rain falling in the air, you've obviously got pollution levels. number and the levels of metals in the lakes rises as well, because they've been washed out of the soil by acid rain. So obviously you have a normal level of metals inside the soil, but if a load of metals are washed out of the soil because of leaching from acid rain and they're washed into lakes, you have higher levels of metals in water, and that's going to affect, our water quality. So all in all, acid rain is not a good story. So there are things we can do to prevent it. That's the good news. So to prevent acid rain, instead of powering our power stations, instead of creating power and electricity by burning coal, we should really be switching to natural gas. Now, we have really seen that in recent years in Ireland. We have been kind of switching from burning coal in our power stations to burning natural gas. That's a good thing. That's one way of cutting down on acid rain, because gas doesn't produce as much harmful gases as coal would. Another thing to do is, I told you earlier that they have those big high chimney stacks. You can install filters in the smokestacks, in the chimney stacks, in the existing coal power stations. So we know how dirty the fumes and the emissions are from burning coal. So what we can do is put filters into the chimney stacks in the power stations. If they're still going to continue and insist on burning coal, at least we could try to filter the fumes coming out of it, reduce the pollution up in the air, reduce the likelihood of acid rain happening. I suppose our cars have become more energy efficient and more environmentally friendly. They've now got far fewer emissions. We're driving more hybrid and electric vehicles. However, we still do have a lot of vehicles around that, emit out fumes from diesel and petrol cars. So that's a problem, but we are getting better. We should be definitely trying to switch to more renewable, cleaner energy. So we should be demanding that our government give us electricity that's been formed from solar power, wind power, so that we reduce our reliance on burning fossil fuels. Therefore, we cut down on the likelihood of acid rain occurring. We should encourage people where possible to ditch the cars and use more public transport. Okay? So a final thing that we could do is just reduce the amount of electricity we use. Don't leave it on standby. We're terrible for leaving switches on for phone chargers, leaving TV on standby, computers on standby, and we don't need to. We don't need to be using electricity for them if we're not using them. Okay? So we've a load of suggestions there on how to prevent acid rain, and that is everything you need to know for your exam. So what is acid rain? What are the damage? What causes it? How does it form? What are the damages caused by it? And what are the solutions?